Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For Nerds by Nerds, I'm Nerdarchy Dave, and I'm hanging out with Rich Lescouflair today, and we're going to be talking about gaming. You're a Guild Adept, so you've done a bunch of stuff over there, as well as you have basically your own game, Esper Genesis. Sorry, a little dyslexic sometimes.
Okay.
But which is built off the 5e chassis. Do you consider that a 5e game or more of like its own game? But I guess before you answer that question, you should introduce yourself and say hi to everybody.
Hey, everybody. I am Rich Lescouflair. I am a designer, graphic web, and writer, and I'm also lead designer and managing partner of Alligator Alley Entertainment. We make Esper Genesis, which is, like Dave said, uh, heroic sci-fi RPG using the 5e engine. I'm also a DM's Guild Adept. I do a lot of writing and layout work on that end, and the occasional freelance D&D stuff. And yeah, I can see the chat. Hi, everybody.
Yep, they're in there and chatting. Yeah, so Esper Genesis is kind of your baby. So do you when you think of that, do you think of that as part of 5e or its own thing?
As a game, I I kind of think of it as I kind of think of it as a little bit of both. It's supposed to be when you open up the Esper Genesis core book, you look at everything and you kind of already know how everything works. Even the new rules when you look at the starship stuff and all the that the system has its own functions, but everything tailors to 5e. So it's a 5e game, but it's not a D&D game. It's got its own setting, its own world, its own everything is it can stand on its own, but you can pull in whatever you want from anything else 5e into it.
Yeah, it definitely. You had run a game at PAX Unplugged for a few of us, and
Yeah.
there wasn't a whole lot to have to like learn. The only thing you knew was the classes had different functions, but pretty much if you knew how to play 5e, you could sit down and play the game with very little prep. Because I didn't prep at all, just went in, made a character, and played the game, and it worked out really well. Or maybe you did. Did we do pre-gens? Maybe we did
We did
pre-gens.
pre-gens. We
Yeah.
did pre-gens. Yeah, yeah. You still need pre-gens because you still need to get used to the races and classes are a bit different. The way the powers work, they use like a point system. There's starship combat. There's the burst fire. There's stuff that you need to learn, but it's just not difficult to learn because all of it is just kind of if you already know how to play 5e, then it's kind of like, oh, this is this rule, and then it just goes along with what I'm already doing. So that was the beauty of it. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like you're playing D&D. That's what we were aiming for. Was I wanted to do it that way where you know what you're doing, but it still feels like a sci-fi game.
Right. And you definitely get that from playing it. So there is a ton of amazing art in these books. Who did the art directing?
I did the art directing. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. No, not do the art directing. I commissioned. I did the art commissioning. The art directing was actually done by Brian Dalrymple, who is our most amazing graphic design and layout artist. He kind of put everything together. We sat next to each other most of the time when we were even doing the core in the first place, and just us, 2 feet apart, just kind of coming up with all the text and the way everything looks. And he was putting his stuff together the way he thought would look great, and it looked fantastic. And then at the same time, I'm looking at it going, okay, now we need to make it look like 5e, but not. It's got to be its own thing, but it still has to run that 5e format that everybody's used to. So that way, it's hidden. You know what I mean? Like you're looking at it, and it's like I know what I'm looking at. I'm looking at something different, but I know what I'm looking at, and that's kind of the way that we wanted it to work.
Yeah, you have to come up with your own dress and get all that information in there in a way that people can look at it and used to seeing it. Like, so I know for our book, I did all the art directing. I hated it. I did not like it at all. Like, I liked seeing the stuff as it came in, but I hate being the guy that has to say yes and no, and be
Yeah.
like, change this thing. And I also discovered I'm terrible at like interpreting the initial sketches.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. We got lucky in terms of that. Normally, when I'm commissioning art, I don't like doing that either. But one of our actually our main artist, Santi Casas,
Mm-hmm.
uh, he was one of our friends, Louis Porter Jr. actually referred Santi to us. So we had contacted him, and I was just like, let me just see, I can't really find art that I'm looking for, and sent him a description, just a description, and he came back with like 3 sketches in maybe a day. And he's like, "Yeah, I got this idea, this, and this," and I looked at everything, and I'm like, "That's exactly what I want." How did you know? And then ever since then, he was really easy to work with. He kind of knew which way I was going with everything, and then that way I had a base, because that's what you want when you're doing commissioning and art direction, right? Is you have a base of everything you want to look at, and then you can go to other artists and say, "Hey, this is this piece that I commissioned. Make it look like that," and then it came together that way.
I felt like we got the best results when the artist is like, I got an idea. Can I do this? Like
Yeah,
when they're like into it, and and they're like a dog with a bone, and they just want to run with it. And I think some of our best pieces came out of that for sure.
yep. That's one of the recommendations I would have for anybody that's commissioning art pieces is let the artist do their thing. You know, it's always worth it. They'll come up with stuff you might not think of, and if you're too constrained, it's never going to come out exactly the way that you want.
Oh, someone is thanking you for salt marsh encounters over on the DM's Guild. Poison from Kuwait.
Oh yeah, well you're welcome. Saltmarsh was a lot of fun to work on. That was I did the some of the writing for that, and the layout work for that, but that was definitely not just me. We had a bunch of amazing talent on that. We had uh, James Intricasso, who any of you were in this chat saw yesterday. We had MT Black, Jenny Loveday, James Hake, tons of people
How
that
many
that
how
put
many
together.
products do you have over on the DM's Guild now?
As just myself, or are you talking about the Guild
Just in
Adepts?
general. I mean, you've been adept since the beginning, right?
No. Well, since it started, yeah, since it launched, I've been an adept. So let me think. I don't know. I don't know if I can. I don't know if I can. 20. I actually don't know how many products the adepts came out with. I would guess somewhere close to 20, and then that's not counting the ones that I released myself.
Because you do a
So
lot of the layout stuff.
yeah, I do layout for the majority of the Gilded Up stuff. Uh, I do have to mention that we have recently acquired the wonderful Stacy Allen, who is aside from myself the only person that knows how to use InDesign extremely well, and she makes beautiful layouts, and we're very very appreciative of her as well. She's actually doing the layout for the Eberron uh, Adventurers League path,
Okay, cool.
and she does a wonderful job.
So now you'll get in there and do some more writing then maybe.
Yeah, that's exactly what I said to them when I was talking to them the first time. I'm like, oh my god, I get to go and write stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I just imagine when you find out that she's doing InDesign stuff, you've got tears in your eyes of joy.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
it's
you're
nice.
always in demand at least.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that I dislike doing it. It's just I know that I don't like making people wait. Oh, I got this thing, and then I kind of want to write something, so I push people to the side, and I don't like doing that because it's our group, it's our team, I just like everybody else on that team want to put out great things that everybody can enjoy, and it also steps up the game on the DM's Guild. Look, this is what we put out, and give everybody else kind of a baseline to for stuff to put out. I actually feel like since we started putting out product, a lot of other people have stepped up their game. Gotten together, collaborations. They've put out some amazing products.
That is actually a really good point. When you compare of the different like one bookshelf, I guess stores. I don't know what you exactly would call them, but because you have Drive Through RPG, and then you also have the DM's Guild, where I feel like that having the Guild Adepts kind of gives us baseline, like you said, for people to look at and say, well, this is the bar. Where if you go into one of the other places on one bookshelf or even anywhere's online, really, it could be like the Wild Wild West, where there is nothing to base anything on. So that helps bring up the quality, and which does another thing which I like, which starts to get rid of like pay what you want, and having price tags on things, because as creators you guys should get paid for what you're doing. And it really just kills the industry when everyone's fighting for the bottom.
I agree.
It's like
I'm not was never a fan of pay what you want. I guess it really depends on the product. It also depends on who releases it. but yeah, if you create a product, you should always expect, if you're putting it up for sale on DM's Guild, put it up on sale for something. If not, if you want to give it away for free for any particular reason, then do that. But you should get paid for your work. Everyone should get paid for their work. Do not be afraid to ask for payment for your work and what you've done. You put the time and effort into it, and that's what it's there for.
Yeah. Well, my biggest concern too is with pay what you want is it just hurts the industry. It drives out the talent. Like they start looking for places where they can make a better living. So we just have less. Like we do a single like pay what you want product over on the DM's Guild, only because it's the only way we could do the thing we wanted to do. And that was when we do these character build guides, we can't legally print that stuff anywhere because we're using all of Wizards of the Coast properties. But we can put it on the DM's Guild. So we put it over there as pay what you want. If people want to pay for it, they can. If they don't, whatever. But like we use it for a very specific purpose. Like that's not a stream of. We don't consider that a stream of revenue.
Right. Well, yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not that pay what you want is doesn't have a use, but just like how you described, that should be probably closer to the use for it than, hey, I just put a product out and I don't know what price to set for it, so.
Yeah, and I feel like too, like if people want to make stuff, they can make stuff. Get a blog and make stuff over there, But getting a little off track here. So,
yeah.
Esper Genesis, you started up your own organized play for that?
We did. It's called the Crucible Core. Anybody that has played Adventurers League, it's pretty much the same type of thing. We have we're finally pulling our Crucible Core rules out of beta because we've had while we're still coming out with the main books, we didn't want to put in too many rules yet that that didn't make any sense that we would end up having to change by the time the Massachusetts Guide is out. But for anybody interested, you can go to the Esper Genesis homepage, espergenesis.com. You can sign up there, get your own Crucible Core serial number. It's the same as like a Adventurers League or a DCI number, if ever heard of those. and we have 8, 9, 10, 11 adventures out right now. We're coming out with a 12th pretty soon. We're going to finish up the season 1 of that.
So that seems like such a massive undertaking. To me,
bigger than I thought.
yeah. I mean, it seems like one of those things that's always going to be bigger than you thought. And that's quite a amount of adventures too to put out already.
Yeah, yeah, we've had to coordinate with some of our writers and get some get some editors in there. It's been touch and go. The adventures aren't out as fast as I would have wanted them, but at the same time we're also planning on doing something in the, I guess the easiest way to describe it is we're going to have official adventures, and then we're also going to allow Crucible Core play with homebrew stuff, like in the middle. So kind of uh, like a main storyline, and then you have almost like side story episodes that you can bring your Crucible Core character through with homebrew play, and then you can go right back to the main storyline at that point. So that way, while we're still coming out with content, players don't feel like they're stuck. Oh yeah, I only have one other adventure I can go to, or that sort of thing.
So we do have a question. Anybody else, if you have questions, just put question in front of it. It just makes it a lot easier for us to pick them out. So Fire BR47, do you ever provide them with reference art, speaking to artists, like scouring Pinterest for stuff?
Yes. Yep. That's step one. Actually, yeah. Giving a verbal description isn't the artist is never going to see entirely what you're describing unless you go find something similar. Or actually, what's even better is you find two or three pieces that are generally similar and say, yeah, I want something, with like if you're doing like a person, you could say, I want somebody that looks like that with like this color skin, wearing that armor, and that and let them go from there.
Yeah, there's a lot of that being like, okay, I like these hobgoblins, how they look, or whatever it is you're having them draw, and
Right.
pulling different aspects and circling things, and then see what they come back with. And actually, Pinterest is a great place for that. I unfortunately rarely did I think to do that. I usually just did a Google image search and
Yeah.
put things together. But you know what? Our next book will be so much easier after having fumbled through the first one.
Yeah, we learned a lot between Core Manual and Threats Database. Threats Database was a lot easier as far as figuring out what we needed for art and what to describe, who to talk to, what to send.
Now you used the same artist for everything.
We have three artists that we primarily use art
Okay.
for.
I
Uh, but yeah, one Santi is kind of our baseline artist. Like he does uh, pretty much establishes the look, and then we go to other artists and say, okay, this is kind of the art style that we're looking for, at least something akin to this, because sci-fi is the everything. The sci-fi genre is so broad that if you don't really have a baseline to work from, you're going to have a whole bunch of different stuff.
Yeah, I mean you're right there. It encompasses a lot. So you do need, as far as the look, and even, but not even just the look, just like the feel of the game thematically when you play it. Like, is it Star Wars or is it Star Trek? Kind of, or is it Babylon 5, or like. Unfortunately, there's like a bunch of different things that we can look at and elements,
Mm-hmm.
so you can be like, hey, I'm sure you did a bunch of that. So Nathan wants to know, what was the Esper Genesis for this idea? Seems really cool, and I look forward to see where it goes.
Um, I'm trying to figure out the question. Where did the idea come from?
For Esper Genesis,
Or
I think
oh,
that's
for
what
Esper
Nathan
Genesis.
is.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Well, originally, honestly, it just blew up from where it started. We, I was originally just making sci-fi weapons and armor for 5e because I love sci-fi and I love D&D, and I said, okay, I was thumbing through like I think the DM's work toolkit or something in the back of the DM's guide, and I saw like futuristic stuff, and so I can make some stuff like this. So I did that, I showed it to my friend Eric, who is now our producer, and he said, "Okay, great. This looks really cool. What are you going to do with it?" I looked at it and I was like, "I don't know. I don't know who's going to use this stuff." And I was like, maybe I need some extra rules to go with this. Okay, maybe I need a setting for this. Okay, that setting needs vehicles. That setting needs like a starship thing. Let me do that. Okay, now we need species. Now we need new classes. Now we need to do this, do that, and it just kind of just kept going and going and going until I said, "All right, we're gonna make a game out of this." And so I took a lot of storyline concepts from my favorite stuff, my favorite things from sci-fi when I was a kid. Everything from Star Wars, Star Trek, Fantasy Star, which was I was big into. I was a Sega kid, and all the favorite stuff when I was older: Firefly, Mass Effect, which had a very big influence on the look and the art. And I just sandwiched them together and said, okay, I'm going to build a storyline around this, and that's where it came from. That's the start of it.
So it sounds like it was definitely a snowball effect.
Yeah.
You're just like, I want a laser blaster. Well, I'm like, well, if they got a laser blaster, you're going to need armor. And then you're like, well, who's going to wear this armor?
It's like anybody that builds a PC, right? They know as soon as they need to replace one part, they're like, oh, I need like 6 different new pieces.
The dominoes just kept falling. So what is the through line story then for Esper Genesis for people that aren't familiar?
So it is in our galaxy, centuries in the future. The overall concept is originally there were these space artifacts that were moon sized. They came to be known as the Crucibles. They are made of all elements and none. And there are certain species that were able to travel to the cores and harness the energy source from them. It's a renewable energy source that's called Soria. And when they started using, once they started refining it, they were able to do everything from faster than light travel, infinite power towards ships, and eventually, because that's the way it works, weapons and things like that. It became a part of everyday life, down to the smallest electronics have like Saurian chips in them. Over time, because just like everything else, people are using things that they don't understand and incorporate it into everything. People started exhibiting all these special abilities. Certain people, not necessarily everyone, but they started to be able to instinctively control gravity, control light. Eventually these powers became converting one element to another, and they found out that they were attuning to the energy that's coming out of the crucibles, and these are what espers are. And that's the original concept, and of course there's a whole story dynamic built around it.
So what happens if they shut down?
They don't. They are nigh indestructible, although they get fought over a lot.
That's the first thing I think about. Like, what if they shut down for some reason? And all these people have special abilities because of them. Would their abilities go away?
There is definitely a meta story behind it. The whole game has a meta plot that I refuse to reveal even to the guys that are working on it with me.
This story dies with me. Well, you're gonna have to put it down somewhere, as in like seal it in a capsule or something.
All right, yeah.
Upon your demise, the capsule will open so that the story can continue.
This is what happens. No, I do have it. So I kind of gave some hints, as far as these things are concerned. Obviously, the crucibles, they activate at random times, or is it random? When they activate, they sync with each other, and they can be found. When a crucible activates, it can be anywhere in the galaxy. So there are spots where people have, and people use them to travel across the galaxy between from one crucible to another. So there's a lot going on with these things. People don't know why they're there.
So does that mean there is no faster than light travel, but they can kind of like teleport with the crucibles?
There's two. There is faster than light travel, using the star drives that the ship has.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're close to a crucible, you can instantly teleport to another crucible. It's actually called a space fold. Gee, I wonder where that came from.
Everything comes from someplace.
Everything comes from something.
It's like eventually there are no new stories to tell. All we can do is try and put our spin on them. So Nathan wants to know, so Esper's proto mages, psychics?
Some. Espers, so every Esper Genesis character has, they are an Esper, but they're an Esper in different ways. So you have your Melders, who are your elemental, your energy converters per se. I guess that's like the closest to the mage that you're going to get. You have your adepts that are your psychics. You have your cybermancers, which are your they sort of look at the world as like this machine that can manipulate, sort of like the Neo in the Matrix kind of thing. And yeah, you have your physical Espers, your specialist and your warrior, who they're able to channel energy into their gun or their blade or something like that. They everyone has a different function, so they all attune to the crucibles in different ways.
And also, folks, in the pinned comment, you can find links and to check out Esper Genesis and all the stuff that Rich is involved with. There's a Facebook and Twitter link there, as well as the website for your convenience.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, like I said, when I first started looking at this, and I've got the first two books. Matter of fact, I think they're over there, just out of my reach. I was blown away by the art. It's so fantastic. It looks so good.
I have them in my reach. They're right here.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so
light thing.
Though, yeah, so the core book came up really good, but the other one was getting some glare on it. Can you see the cover of that?
Yeah, that's the one that we came out recently. That's the
Threats. Yeah,
like a blurry sort of thing.
So pretty.
Yeah,
awesome.
that cover was done by Charles Urbach. He anybody that goes to any big con, can find it. He's an amazing artist. He actually, I think this was one of his very few sci-fi pieces. He was really excited to work on it. We were really happy to have him. We were like, oh my god, wow, Charles wants to do this. Okay, great.
Shroom Slugs says they only play paladins. Do you have a paladin equivalent?
We do. It is called the Sentinel. The Sentinel is an Esper that wears a harness that communicates sort of empathically with the Sentinel, and the Sentinel can use it to channel their powers, through their weapon, either smite, smite style attacks, sort of paladin style, or shoot laser beams out of their weapon if they want. They're systematically, as far as 5e is concerned, they function very similar to the paladin does. The way the paladin does.
Who doesn't want to shoot laser beams out of their sword?
Of course.
Is there not a better use for that?
What else do you use a sword for?
Red Jackal wants to know if you're from South Florida.
I am definitely not. No. I'll be the first to deny that.
Yeah, Rich is actually from the Northeast originally.
Yeah, I'm a born and raised New Yorker. I grew up in Harlem.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I came down here, this was a different universe.
Yeah. But Alligator Alley is now out of Florida, correct?
Yes. Yeah. If the name doesn't make it, obvious enough. Somebody looked at our logo, like, an alligator walking down State Road 84, and it's just like, can you make it more obvious that you guys are from Florida?
So that is kind of funny. Did you watch Tiger King at all?
No, I haven't. I might have been more tempted to do it if not for my wife, who probably wants to watch it as little as I do.
Yeah.
But we're both home now, so we kind of we go back and forth with what we want to watch during our off time.
Joe Exotica is not from Florida, but he seems like he should be. He's like the every Florida man.
I've heard the stories. Florida man exists.
Yeah.
Don't think he doesn't.
He definitely exists. Someone asked me, I had made that mention. I mentioned that to someone, and they're like, "What's that even mean?" I'm just like, just Google Florida man and pick a random date, and you'll understand. Yeah. and then do it again. You'll totally get it. It's a thing.
It's a funny thing.
That's an actual place, huh? Red Jackal says I was raised close to Alligator Alley. That's why I asked.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Alligator Alley is it's a part of I-75 that actually goes from the east end to the west end of Florida.
And is there a bunch of alligators there?
And yeah, it's basically a strip of road and a swamp on either side. That's what you're looking at. So I've traveled that road only twice. Once during the day, once at night.
Oh my god!
Day is the way to go.
We're going down a really dark road in the
chat here. So about role playing games.
Yeah. Oh, they're making it about role playing games for sure. The Florida Man class. How would you play a Florida Man in your game? That's great.
I'm gonna be nice. I'm friends with a lot of people from Florida, so
yeah. Well, I feel like the Florida people are like probably some of the first ones to agree, though. It's not our fault. It's in the news headline all the time.
Yeah. My wife is born and raised, and she's that's what it is. Yeah, I know.
The Bill Allen is in the chat. Hey, Bill. He wants to know if we can make a Tiger King NPC for an adventure. Maybe he rules an exotic monster zoo. We've done a planar zoo. And I think to make that NPC, all you need is a druid with a liberal use of animal friendship.
Yeah, that's a thought. Well, if you can think of a sci-fi version of that, then I might be.
Well, one of our adventures kind of like dips into that realm. It's the planar zoo, and it's got an adventure that kind of accompanies it. They call it the humanoid exhibit. So.
Is it kind of like full humanoids, or is it more like Futurama with the heads and jars?
No, full humanoids. So the idea is humanoids are too smart and curious, so they just don't work in a regular zoo. So they have to trick them, and they'll dump people into the humanoid exhibit event at certain times, and they set up like parts of the facility and kind of retrofitted it to look like a dungeon. Because if you leave your humanoids unsupervised with nothing to do, they're going to get curious and get into things, so you give them an adventure or a dungeon to delve into. We get a little silly sometimes.
You're gonna have to run that for me. It's on now. That's it. You're slotted.
I ran it a couple times at D&D in a castle, and both groups did it completely different.
So, of course, that's the way it always works.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, that's only two runnings. Like, we had talked to Keith Baker, and he ran his one adventure like 50 some times, and he's like,
"Oh, wow."
Well, yeah, he did this thing where, on this recent project, are you working with Keith?
No.
Okay, because I thought you said something about Eberron.
No. That's Stacey Allen is doing the layout for the Eberron AL stuff.
Okay, that's right. But yeah, like he did this. He took this year where he couch surfed across the country, And the deal was like he'll run a game for you and your friends, you run a game for him, and then show him something from like your town or whatever. And he did that for like a year, and you just would run the same adventure in different towns across the country.
That sounds like fun, actually.
It is. If you don't have any roots or nothing to do, sure, why not? Talk about some playtesting now.
Jeez, yeah, you can perfect it that way. Just run it 50 times, and then sure, you can run off the top of your head with all corrections.
So Nathan wants to know how well, horribly, do you think the EG threat book would work in a standard 5e game?
It would work. I would honestly say that it would fit in just fine. Yeah, everything that's in the threats database is balanced enough to run in any 5e game. Mind you, it would be abnormally cruel to throw these sci-fi creatures at at D&D characters, but then again, D&D character. I've seen some interesting things. I've seen players do interesting things with the characters in D&D.
Do you think the CR would transfer over?
Yeah, the CR. As far as I've heard, we did a lot of playtesting with these, or at least numbers wise, just sort of back and forth. Every time I put something together, I did combinations with the charts, and then did mock mock rolls here and there, and everything works. Everything works just the same as it would. So if you took a CR 12 threat out of the threats database, works just like a CR 12 threat out of the monster manual.
Okay, so yeah. I do have this thick book full of monsters. Maybe I'll start surprising my players with things that they're definitely not expecting. But it's not a new concept to D&D. I mean, Gary Gygax started doing that almost immediately, really.
Yeah.
So that's definitely a thing. And, if you look at monsters like Mind Flayers and Aboleth, they definitely scream that kind of
aliens.
That kind of weirdness anyway.
And in fact, there are a couple of creatures in the threats database that sort of borrow. Let's just I'll say there's one species, the Kradron, actually, who are I sort of put in a hint that they are generationally related to the Aboleth.
It's on the cover of the core book.
Yeah, that's right. It's on the cover of the core book. Yeah, you look at it, it's like a gigantic, walking space Aboleth,
which
but
is awesome.
At the same time, I don't, I try not to give away whether or not they came before or after.
yeah. And also, must not get sued.
Yeah. Well, there is that. But I also did it in the vein of if they're aliens, then I can use that in Esper Genesis. But at the same time, I wanted to completely avoid what another rather popular game had done, and just kind of made the sci-fi versions of the old stuff. I didn't like that at all. Because Esper Genesis was its own setting, and because the core manual introduced its own rules and its own feel, I didn't want to, take a space troll, space orc.
You wanted it to be all new and fresh.
Yeah, I wanted to do all that. I wanted everything to have a backstory and go, ooh, that's something I can create a story out of, because the best database is aside from it being just a monster book, it's kind of a setting book. All the stuff that's described in there has a background and it has a place in the galaxy, so that somebody can build a story or an adventure or even a campaign off.
Yeah, and I think the idea of having those hints are in there, little Easter eggs that it could be, is a lot of fun. And obviously, anyone who's playing in their own game can do whatever they want with it, so they don't have, you don't have to worry about that. If you want this monster to have originated from Aboleths, you could definitely do that. It looks close enough, but still different and awesome at the same time. So, Bill Allen, is there any plan for a world in Esper that can be discovered where there is a crossover between some of the more alien monsters races in D&D? So I think we were touching on that a little bit inadvertently.
Yeah, I guess. A world. Well, I yes and no. It's not something official that I would put out, considering the fact that we have to be very careful with how we use the OGL and the reference document that they gave us for Esper Genesis. So I try not to stray too much into the D&D IP, because then I'm like, am I doing the right thing? Should I use this? Should we not use this? Are we gonna get a cease and desist letter? I don't. So I if we do put out something, because we are planning on putting out setting supplements, so just more broad story. Even the back of the threats database kind of has like a little chapter on like threats to the galaxy and storylines from there. So we're going to do setting supplements that branch out from those. And yeah, some of those might have some things alluding to things that might exist already in 5e, but certainly nothing definite for that reason.
So here's another one pertaining to what we're kind of talking about a little bit from Nathan. Will there be space goblins?
No.
No. And then
that was an easy one.
That's super easy. And then Shroom Slug wants to know, what's the hardest monster that you've created? Do you have an analog to the Tarrasque, basically?
An analog, not directly.
Yeah, that's when I say analog, I don't mean directly either. More so like, your Tarrasque.
I will say the highest CR creature we have in the threats database is called the Defiler, and it is I don't remember, it's in the high 20s, I think the CR is, and it is very, very powerful. It's Tarrasque. I guess it's the closest thing to being Tarrasque like. It's honestly a winged dinosaur with a black hole in its belly. So
I hate when that happens.
When those dinosaurs, they open up the singularity in its stomach, and then there's nothing you can do at that point. But it is that kind of creature where it's only meant to be fought in just ridiculous high level circumstances. It's also strong enough to where it has its own ship stats in another part of the book. So that
nice.
You can go and attack your spaceship if you want. That's another thing we kind of had to do here and there.
A dinosaur with a singularity in its belly. Ted would like that. Ted loves dinosaurs. We played a Spelljammer game, and I used Scro Space Orcs, and their ship was basically an inert kraken flying through space, and
okay.
And the tentacles would act as catapults and hurl missiles at other ships. So I had them hurling flail snails.
Oh, that's cool.
Which they weren't really a danger to the party per se. They did more damage if they got hit by them, but they were definitely a danger to the crew. And then the players were high enough level where they realized they could just push them off fairly easy from the ship. But then afterwards, they realized how expensive or how much value flail snail shells had. And then they were in tears.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Think of the gold. Fire BR-47. With the naval system recently making a resurgence, does Will Esper Genesis have a similar system with ships? I can kind of answer that. It already had a system, so...
Yeah, Esper Genesis has its own ship combat system, actually before the naval system came out. So,
and also for people that don't know, like Esper Genesis has been out for a couple years now. Is that accurate? Yeah, feel like it's been a couple years.
Yeah, we the core book came out in summer 2018. The threats database came out late summer last year. And we were planning on having the third book out last month, actually, but there's a lot of things came up, and we also had artists that aren't available yet, and there's this whole pesky global pandemic thing.
Yes, there is that as well. I mean, we were talking about printers and stuff, and like if you're printing in the U.S., those printers are shut down, so there's nothing really you can do about that, and who knows when they're going to open back up.
Yeah. So to answer the question, yes, Esper Genesis already has an integrated starship combat system. It actually it has its own the way that it works is the crew of the ship has base stats, and the crew of the ship, depending on what role they play, modifies the ship stats, and the combat works in rounds the same as ground combat does, but the ship the crew acts as one unit, so they it's kind of like everybody has their station, and they all have to make decisions that affect each other every round. And at the same time, since it runs in rounds, you can run ship combat and ground combat at the same time in case you have borders or combat happening in a different place. So yes, it's there. It's not very similar to the naval combat system at all, which I'm kind of happy about, since galleons work a little differently, I guess, than starfighters. So that's best way I can answer it.
Well, that's always a challenge too when you have that kind of game, because it's like how do you create this core component that's going to be important to the game, because players are absolutely going to want to do it, but you don't want them to do it and be like, oh, this kind of sucks. Johnny over here, who's the captain, is doing all this stuff, and like I don't have anything to do.
Yeah. When I was originally putting it together, I wanted to give everybody something to do. So it's almost like at the beginning of the round, like the ship becomes a conference. Like, okay, what's going on this time? Who's doing this? Who's firing the weapon? Who's doing the jury rigging? And like, what maneuver is the pilot doing? Because whatever each person does is going to affect something that the gunner does, or it's going to affect something that the technician does. And they actually, I like it a little more in that sense than ground combat sometimes, because ground combat, everybody does what they want, and unless it's affecting another player somewhere on the board, they don't really they can sort of make their own decisions, where in the starship combat everybody's decision counts, and they have to discuss it with each other. A lot more teamwork goes into the game that way.
Yeah, I would think that any space or any mass combat system like that is going to require a lot more cooperativeness amongst the players and teamwork, like you said. So Daryl's a question, but we've probably answered this one already pretty well. And he wanted to know if there would be any old, will we be using any old Spelljammer creatures? You've already said new stuff, all new stuff. All
new stuff. There is a species that who do live inside living ships made from living material, and like there are intelligent ships, but for the most part you're really looking at new stuff. I actually tried to avoid making things like Spelljammer because like I said, that's its own thing. We don't stray into that universe.
It makes sense, you want to do your own thing. And also, like, Spelljammer has a much different feel than Esper Genesis and style, right? One is way more fantasy, and the other one is clearly science fiction.
Yeah, it's boats in a bubble in space.
Yeah,
just gonna have to avoid that.
So this is not a question, but I just think it's funny. Daryl T. Jones is one of the artists that worked on Out of the Box Encounters and a friend of ours. But, oh crap, my Google Assistant just decided to spontaneously search dinosaurs with a singularity. Yeah. It's going to order you some really weird things from Amazon.
Yeah. If you actually come across something like something like what we created, I'm kind of scared, actually. Then
Nice, and they owe you royalties. Pay up.
Yep. Cease and desist to you.
Yeah. So we usually well, I can't say usually since this is the second one being back. So the plan is 45 minutes to an hour. So we're in between there. So we're going to wrap things up. Oh, it depends on whether I have things to do after this or not, really. And today is one of those days. But Rich, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. If you want to tell people where they can find you real quick before we head on out.
Sure. Thanks for having me on. Let me see. I haven't been looking at the chat much, but that's me on Twitter, and I think you gave our website already, but
yeah. So I in the pinned post or pinned comment, I should say, is I have a website, Facebook, and Twitter for Alligator Alley.
Oh, for Alligator Alley. Okay. Well, yeah, if you want to find Esper Genesis, you can just go straight to espergenesis.com also. But yeah, Alligator Alley, we have our own main page. We also, we came out with the Tales and Tomes from the Forbidden Library, which is, going back to Fantasy 5e. That was written by Gregory Wilson. So, if you're looking for more RPG stuff aside from Esper Genesis, you can always find it there. You can find me by name on that's my Twitter handle up there. You can find let me see
all the places.
Yep, that's Alligator Alley on Twitter, and yeah, you can find just by typing in Alligator Alley Entertainment or my name in Facebook, and I should be there, and also the Esper Genesis group page. Esper Genesis also has a Discord channel. If you want to take a look for that.
Nice. If you shoot that stuff over to me, I will add it to the pinned comment.
Okay.
So, with that, we're out of here. Until next time, stay nerdy.